This show is a proud member of the Nerdy Legion Podcast Network. Get more at nerdylegion.com. Enjoy the show.
This is Brightside Home Theater.
Hey, home theater nerds. Welcome to the Brightside Home Theater Podcast. The podcast dedicated to the sights, the sounds, the scenes. And this week, we're going to talk about the quiet scene. Because we're going to talk about A Quiet Place. I don't have any creatures running around here. I don't have to be quiet. A Quiet Place. Fantastic movie. First off, thank you to all my patrons. Thank you to everybody following me over on Twitter. You guys are the ones that make this so much fun. If you want to support me on Patreon monetarily, you can go to Patreon/Brightside Home Theater. Check me out there. If you don't know how to use it, they'll show you how. Any and all is appreciated, and supporting me on Twitter is appreciated just as much. Spread the word. Let them know who I am so that we get more people to join in on the conversation. All right, enough with that. Let's get to this week's movie, A Quiet Place, in 4K. The picture, really, really good. I can honestly say I don't know if it's great or it's bad because this movie is all about the sound. The 4K looked good. I compared it to the streaming on, it's Paramount. Paramount Plus, I believe, has A Quiet Place 4K streaming in Atmos as well. The picture, not as crisp. It's a little bit better on the disc than it is on Paramount Plus, that is. The sound, Paramount Plus, clearly not as dynamic, not even close. The disc, in this movie, you need that. You need the dynamic sound in this movie because anything being crushed, anything being lost, you're going to miss it because this movie has such quiet scenes, and that obviously that's what it's about, but it's still a very dynamic scene throughout this movie. And we're going to talk a lot about those scenes and how quiet they are, but still on how dynamic they are, even though they don't have huge sounds added to them. There are some huge sounds in this movie, believe me, some great bass notes, some great pans, some great use of overheads throughout this movie, as well as creatures move around over your head. So if you don't own this movie, don't buy it for the picture. Although the picture is great, not distracting. To be honest with, like I said, the picture in this movie, I can't really say it's great, but I can't say it's bad. It's just there because I didn't make note of it because I had so much fun with the sound. You need to own this movie. If you do not own this movie as a home theater fan, you need to own this movie because it's an education in lack of sound. How important it is to have no sound. How important it is to have a semi-soundproof room. If you have kids running around your house or you have dogs running around making noises while you're watching this movie, it will distract from the movie because you need to have a quiet place to watch A Quiet Place. Because the sound or lack of sound is a character unto itself in this movie, and it demonstrates how important the sound is in a movie and lack of sound. Even my fan on my projector, only one time in my notes did I notice that it was there. Because even during lack of sound, there was sound in this movie, and then that's what you're starting to notice, the little hums in the room, maybe even the noise of a light bulb comes up in this movie. So much fun. Going back and forth with this movie was actually quite a treat because it makes you notice the little things, which I love to do anyways, but that's what this movie is about. So without further ado, that popcorn is popping. Let's get to the beginning. What do we call it? We call it what do we always call it? The opening scene where we always start. All right. A Quiet Place opens with great bass. You don't even have a picture on your screen yet. It just As soon as you hit play on this, as soon as you push play, you get a nice black screen and bass rumbles. My walls vibrated. My seat rumbled. You could feel it. Then the credits roll through. Opening credits roll through. More bass. Then you get day 89. Little bit bass, but the bass starts to dissipate then. Then we open up to the town and the rumbling leaves, and all of that bass, all of that sound goes away, and it leaves you with just the ambient sounds of rustling leaves through an empty street and everything like that, which is exactly what you're going to. They open you up with this bass to get your ears sensitive to that. Like, wow, here comes some great sound in a movie called A Quiet Place, and then nothing. And it's just, and that's the idea. It's like in the absence of sound, there's no such thing, because there's always something. If you get rid of all of the big sounds, now you start to notice all of the little tiny sounds. And that's what they did. They opened you up, and it was fantastic. They opened you up with this great big sound that in a room dedicated to home theater with playing at reference level, you're going to get that big vibrating sound. And now the little nuances of those rustling leaves and little quiet noises around your room, they mean so much more now. Fantastic. Great opening, prelude to the rest of the movie. So, all right, let's move on to 2 minutes and 40 seconds, pill bottles. And we've been through the whole town. We've heard the rustling leaves. We've heard the little papers. We've heard all the quiet sounds going through the town. And now we're in looks like a drugstore type place. And Emily Blunt is looking at the pill bottles. And this is so many quiet sounds. And obviously that's the point. But it's just so much fun because we're getting, like, she's at the opening of this scene, at the 2:40 mark, she's moving pill bottles very gently on the shelf right in front of you. And you can hear it, like they actually localize where those sounds are coming from. The little noises of either the pills moving inside the bottle or her actually setting it down on the shelf, and you get the noise of the pill bottle actually going clunk on the shelf, but it moves across the front stage appropriately. And it's so minor because the absence of sound, you can actually hear the wind in the room, the breeze going through the store. It's so hard to describe in a podcast. You really have to go to these scenes, and hopefully you're in a dedicated room and get to just quiet everything else. Because if my dogs are running around upstairs, I'll hear the clanking on the floor. But it's that little bit of ambient sound in those rooms that actually, it heightens everything else that's going on in that room, that little bit of a breeze. The other thing I noticed in scenes like this, that breeze in the room and any other of the ambient sounds, it's loud enough at reference level that it actually drowns out the fan on my projector. So you don't necessarily, and this is something I went through when I was picking out a projector way, way back when, my first projector. And I wanted a quiet fan noise, and I wanted this and that, and make sure, because I wanted to have, for scenes like this, for movies like this, I wanted to make sure that I could enjoy the movie and not be distracted by the fan. But if you're watching a movie at reference level in a scene like this, chances are there's actually something coming out of your speakers that will drown out the fan, because unless you have a really, really loud fan. And there were a couple of scenes here that actually in the movie that actually go down below the fan noise. And I was like, oh, okay, there I can hear the fan. I don't even remember what they are. If they're stamped and we talk about them, I'll mention it. But it wasn't a distraction, because most of the time, like I said, at the 2 minute and 40 second mark, actually this entire opening, it's supposed to be very quiet, but it really isn't. And this scene here with the pill bottles, they even pan those very, very quiet sounds when the daughter walks in. Okay, so now the camera's gone from her looking at the pill bottles. She's down on the floor about to give the pills to her son. And her daughter walks in, and her quiet little footsteps actually pan from right to left across your screen as she stops to the left side of the screen. Pretty cool. Pretty cool because it's so quiet, but still giving you those accurate pans, which we love so much. All right, let's move on to 3 minutes and 43 seconds silence, because that's what this is. This is what is being demonstrated. Now we are actually going below sound, and we're going to go to absolute, what is represented as absolute silence, because the daughter is deaf. So we're going to flip at this scene here. We're going to flip between reality, lack of sound, and deaf, lack of sound, and listen to how your room changes. Your subwoofers get engaged. They actually, to represent deaf silence, they actually put in some subwoofer effect. My room actually went a little up from still couldn't hear my projector. Fantastic. But it actually, when you're this far into the movie and it's been this quiet for this long, 3 minutes and 43 seconds, your ears are becoming attuned to all of the little things. And just when you think it can't get any quieter, boom, they take all of that away. And now we're seeing the world through a deaf person's perception. And the sound that we're hearing is, ironically, the sound that they're putting into our rooms to represent that is actually a little bit of bass. So they're actually using sound to represent lack of sound, which is mind-boggling, but super entertaining from a home theater perspective. It's like you just get this unbelievable go back and forth. I went back and forth on this a couple of times, and I just think it's such a great artistic choice that I gave it 2 boxes of popcorn, because it's so interesting. And obviously it happens again later in the movie, but it's just so much fun. Really, really enjoyed that. So let's move on to 5 minutes, 49 seconds, ramping up. And I call it this because now the sound starts to ramp up, because the little boy, their son, he's got that little space shuttle with the batteries in it, and he starts walking towards the family, and the bass in the room starts to ramp up. We're not just hearing ambient sounds now. Now there's an actual sound being given to us. It's like it's ramping up, getting more and more ominous as the little boy gets closer to the whole family. And John Krasinski's looking at him, and everybody's like, "Oh no!" But obviously they don't say anything, but just the sound ramping up, and then John Krasinski takes the space shuttle from his son, takes the batteries out of it, and puts it down on the shelf. And at 6 minutes and 22 seconds, the climax of the entire scene, when he puts it down quietly, we get a boom in your room. And it's at this point, the bass has ramped up to a nice rumble under your seat, a little bit of a vibration in the room, very, very low vibration to the room. And then you get that little bit of a boom extra at the end, which feels so much more than it really is, because it's been so quiet for so long, but you can just feel how ominous this is without anything, without any words being expressed, without anything, just the looks on their faces and the way this sound comes into the room and just tells you, like, this isn't good. But if you compare it to all of the other stuff we've talked about since the beginning of this podcast, or all the great scenes that we love, and they're so loud and there's so much feel to it, but something, when you bring it down to such, this is very dynamic. It's not as loud as other scenes, but it's still very dynamic because we're down so low, and our peak noises and our lows are so low, but our peak noises from here, it's still peaking, but compared to other movies, not very loud. But in this movie, so powerful, so great, so much fun. This is such a fun movie to do for home theaters, and it's just basically an experiment in the lack of sound, and there really is no such thing. All right, well, let's move this along to 9 minutes, 30 seconds. Unthinkable. 3 boxes of popcorn. The saddest scene in the entire movie, to me. They lose their son. Let's cut to the chase right away. You could kind of see this coming if you hadn't seen the movie before, and you're like, he's got the little space shuttle. He's tagging along behind the family. They're walking along, and all we hear is the normal sounds of walking through the woods, very quietly, barefoot, walking through the woods, trying not to make a sound. And the little boy turns on the little space shuttle, and it starts making the noises. So now we start to hear those noises. John Krasinski turns around, looks back, and between him and his younger son holding the space shuttle is his daughter, who's deaf. Now we go to see her. She sees her father turn around, and now we get her perspective of nothing, no sound, absolute silence. But then they come back to, now you hear the space shuttle, but the score is ramping up. Here we go. The score is ramping up. We're flashing between the normal sounds of the space shuttle and just rustling leaves. The deaf daughter, her lack of sound, no sound whatsoever. Your room is flashing, and then you add the score in. It's just it's crazy how much your room is changing. The dynamics are changing in your room. All the while, John Krasinski's making his way over there, trying to get to his son to put down the shuttle so that he can save him because these blind things can't see. It doesn't work. Watch this scene. It is unthinkable. They lose their son. You can't even imagine what that would be like to see him taken that way. But the way your room reacts, the way they use the sound here to give you the different perspectives of the different people, and then they bring in that powerful score, that bass coming up through you. Unreal. And then it ends at like 10 minutes and 10 seconds. We get the title page for the movie, because right after the son is taken away, the sound pulls down, and we just get that little ominous bass to go along with the title page. Unreal. Absolutely unreal use of sound to tell the story here of what is going on. Watch that scene with your eyes closed, and you'll know what's going on. It's eerie, it's scary, it's crazy, but it's so much fun when you take your brain away and go, okay, nobody lost a son. This is just a movie that's all made up. So let's have some fun with it. And that's what I had to do. So, all right, let's move along now, and let's get to 19 minutes and 20 seconds. Board games. I gave this 1 box of popcorn. The family's hanging out. We've jumped ahead. The family's made a home for themselves. I forget how many days into the future. I think it's a year and a half later. They've made their home. They're hanging out. The kids are on the floor playing Monopoly, and very quiet. So you're just brought right back into that quiet world, a quiet place. And, just the little sounds of moving the pieces. And if you notice in this scene, even the pieces, you can't have the normal pieces. You have to have quiet pieces. You have to have cloth or something soft that can tap across the board without making a sound. So you brought it, that's what you're paying attention to this entire time. It's like, oh, look at this. And if you're noticing all these little things, like the dice have to be rolled on the carpet, not on the board, all of these things. And then bam, they accidentally knock over the lantern. We get this huge sound in the room. It's a jump scene for sure. Because when I jumped to this scene to see what I stamped this scene. What did I think at 19 minutes and 20 seconds? Boom, made me jump. My wife jumped when we saw it. I could see it. It was huge. I just got a little bit of a shake, but she was like, big scene, right? John Krasinski comes down. He puts the fire out on the floor, and they start looking around. Everybody's quiet. The finger to the lips. Shh, everybody quiet. So they're quiet. They're looking around. And then at 20 minutes and 14 seconds, we get a few birds coming from our Atmos speakers over on the left side of the room. Really, really cool, really subtle. Can't even imagine what this sounded like. Actually, I can't imagine. I watched it on my TV. It just sounded like little birds. You barely even hear it. But in your room, your overhead speakers on your left side of your room give you that nice effect of the birds are over, like on the roof of the house, up above them. Really nice. I gave that one box of popcorn with the little red arrow pointing up, red triangle to point up. Really cool. But nothing really changed. You just heard the birds outside the house moving. No big deal at all. But still, John Krasinski walking around, making sure nobody's coming to the house. I'm looking for sounds, hearing sounds. And then all of a sudden, at 20 minutes and 30 seconds, crash, huge crash, but bigger than the lantern, bigger than anything else in the room so far. Boom! 3 boxes of popcorn, overhead sound, because this crash came, it sounded like from overhead. Huge sound. And then the sounds moved to the front stage overhead, like over the screen. It was just a quick crash. It's over, done. Now we're back to silence again, but just scaring the hell out of you because of the lack of sound this entire time. And then, of course, John Krasinski looks out the window. A couple of raccoons fall on the roof. Another jump scene. But wow, those 3 scenes, fantastic use of lack of sound, ramping up the sound. By the way, the entire time, we also were flipping back and forth between the deaf daughter and taking the ambient sounds that are in the room out of the room. So you get, that goes throughout this movie, which is, and obviously it plays into the end of the movie as well, what the daughter can and can't hear. But wow, what a use of sound and lack of sound therein, but unbelievable. All right, let's move this along to 23 minutes, 50 seconds, dancing with 1 box of popcorn. No, I'm not dancing with a box of popcorn. I'm rating this scene 1 box of popcorn. So this scene here, I started the timestamp at 23:50 because this is where we come in and Emily Blunt is just standing there, kind of moving back and forth, dancing by herself, slowly moving by herself with earpods in and wired earpods in. So she's moving back and forth and John Krasinski goes up to her and they have their nice romantic moment. But pay attention to how the sound transitions from her ear into his ear. Okay. Of course, we'll talk about it at the very end of this scene where the room is filled with sound. But I love the transition because at first you don't really hear the music. All you hear is the very quiet ambient room sound, almost nothing, like we've been talking about the entire time. But when she reaches to her ear to pull the earbud out, you can faintly hear the song. But then as she pulls it out and it becomes exposed to the air coming out of her ear, you can hear the song a little bit more. As it gets closer to John Krasinski's ear, you can hear it more and more. So we are hearing this room through John Krasinski's ears. And at least that's the story they're telling here. When she inserts it into his ear, I love the choice they made of not just putting it on the left side of the room, because now she's putting it into John Krasinski's left ear. So accurately speaking, you would think it would go to the left side of the room. But I think the choice is made that he is totally into this moment, totally into being with his wife. So you get the full sound. You get, okay, this is my reality now. That's what he's thinking. I want to dance with my wife. I want to be with my wife in this moment. And it's just, your room is engaged in full on sound, like Apple, spatial audio in your room, just everywhere. Overheads are engaged. Every channel in your room is engaged. It sounds fantastic, but it was that transition that got us there that I think is just really cool, because if you just want to put that song on, you can just do that on Apple iTunes or just put on any song and you can impress people with your room. but it was that subtle transition and how it grew, and like you're hearing it through John Krasinski's ear, which I thought was really, really cool. That's why I started at $23.50, and that's why I gave it a box of popcorn. I wasn't dancing with a box of popcorn, but I have in the past. It was a quiet night. Anyways, all right, let's move on to 34 minutes and 35 seconds, the river. And I think this scene was put in to explain to the non-home theater fan really what this movie's all about. So at 34 minutes and 35 seconds, we start back at their house. The deaf daughter, she's moving around. She's packing some stuff up in her room, very quiet, setting the stage for, well, basically that's what it is. A quiet place, right? Very quiet. But then the scene jumps to John Krasinski and his son at the side of the river, but they open with a close-up of the rushing water, and you just hear that sound of the river very loud, but not really very loud. It's just normal sound. But in contrast to the rest of the movie, it feels very loud. And that's what this scene is about. It's, John Krasinski gets the fish, takes it, and the fish jumps, and it makes a noise. And it scares the son because the son's thinking, uh-oh, they're going to hear us. But then this entire scene plays out where John Krasinski explains to him little noises by the riverside don't matter. And that's the point of this entire home theater experience with this movie, is how big of a deal these little sounds are to us through the entire movie. But if you go to the riverside, no, the little sounds don't mean that much. I don't know why they're not living at the riverside. I don't know. That's kind of a flaw in the movie. There's a bunch of flaws in this movie, but as a home theater experience, it's a great example of how big sounds, little sounds, it doesn't really matter. It's all in contrast to what they're up against. So the littlest sound can be a huge sound if it's the only sound. Okay, let's end the podcast on. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's move along to 42 minutes, 25 seconds. Old man and John Krasinski and his son are walking through the woods here. And this is a jump scene, and it's nice bass to this, not huge amount of bass. You can't even feel it, but just a nice bass scene where they're walking along and all of a sudden they show the old man off to the side of them and you get that boom and you're like, whoa, because again, just the contrast in sound, very little sound to boom, nice bass scene. And then you have that little bit of a standoff. So the sound comes down, but they're just staring at each other. The old man let's just jump to it. Let's go right to 43 minutes, 10 seconds, scream, and that's getting 3 boxes of popcorn because there's so much to this scene. So we started out, like I said, at 42:25. The old man is like, he just pops up on the side there and you get that little bit of a jump scene. You're like, oh, okay, it settles down. Then the score is still going, telling you this is a very tense moment because John Krasinski's just staring at this guy, telling him, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And it, like, he doesn't want him to just make any noises, but you could just see in this old man's face that he's had enough and he wants it done. He wants it over. So he's going to put out a scream. He screams. John Krasinski picks up his son, runs, but now you get this fantastic heartbeat in your room. I mean, you can feel it in your chest. The boom, 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 the heartbeat racing. All the score is up, the noise is up, everything's up in your room, but that nice bass of, boom, 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 boom. And the old man hides behind a tree. He knows he's about to buy the farm. The creatures come to get him. The sounds of the creatures moving around your room is fantastic. It starts, I think, on the right side of the room, moves over to the front of the room, comes in on the left of it's just, the whole room is engaged. That's why I gave it 3 boxes of popcorn, but that heartbeat is absolutely fantastic. Great, great scene. Lots of fun. All starting at 42:25 and then really ramping out with the scream at 43:10. Fantastic, fantastic. Demo worthy for sure. Awesome scene. All right, let's move on to 45 minutes, 5 seconds, nail. All right, 2 things here. fantastic sound from this scene that I'll get to in a second. We'll save the good for the end of this scene. The bad. I have a hard time suspending disbelief on this scene. You've painted the stairs, you've painted you've taken the care to mark the entire house on where you can step without making a sound, without a creak. You don't even want a creak. You want to be able to step and have it be quiet, so you don't want to hear the little of a board. So you've painted these steps and like I said, the entire house on where you can and can't step. And you're telling me that in all of that time, you pulled up there was a nail exposed on a painted step, a painted footprint on where you can step. Because earlier in the movie, Emily Blunt's dress got caught on a nail and pulled the nail up. How? That's not how nails work. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I've nailed a lot of steps. I've done some carpentry in my life. I'm not a carpenter, but when you put a nail in, the nail goes in and the head is at the top. Her dress got stuck on a nail and pulled up the pointy end, which is supposed to... You don't nail a stair from the bottom up. I don't get it. And if there was even a nail exposed for a dress to get caught on, after you've painted the white mark on where to stand, wouldn't you have removed that nail so that this doesn't happen? Okay. I've said my piece. Had a little trouble with that one. Still have a little trouble with that one. Love the movie. Love this scene for the disgusting sound that the nail makes going into her foot. Our sense of sound, our sense of hearing is heightened so much throughout this movie that as she's going down these stairs, you knew as soon as her dress got stuck on it, somebody's stepping on this damn thing. But as she's going down the stairs quietly, because she's in labor, her water broke, she's trying to get to the basement to be quiet as possible. And as she's hurrying down these stairs, she steps on that nail, and you have to listen to this a couple of times, because the first couple times you're going to be focused on the frame hitting the floor, which is great, and everything in the room kind of becomes engaged with sound. But listen to that initial it like goes right through me. The sound of that nail going into her foot, very, very visceral, you can't feel it, but you can, if you know what I mean. Started at 45:05. It gives you a few seconds into it as she's going down the stairs. Not good at all. Great home theater experience if you're into that kind of thing, but it's just really sends shivers up your back. Really, really great, I gotta say. But why the nail's there in the first place? Another story. All right, let's move this along to 4550. I'm calling this one Red Lights. I'm giving it 2 boxes of popcorn and a red triangle pointing upwards, because the scene opens with Emily Blunt flipping the switch to turn all the lights to red to warn everybody that there's a crisis. And I'm not actually 100% sure if the red lights mean that she's going into labor or she's alerting people that the monsters are in the area. I have a feeling it's the monsters thing, but I'm not even sure if that's been clarified by the end of the movie, to be honest with you. But anyways, when she flips that switch to turn the red lights on, they show her pull down the switch, but then they jump right to a close-up of the red light. So you see the nice big red light bulb on the left side of your screen. So that flips on, and then you see them all trailing off in the background. But when they change color, or when the red lights kick on, you hear the one that's close to you on the left side of your screen. Sounds really cool, but there's also the whole room changes, because it's almost like that that buzzing sound, electric buzz sound, like ting. Really cool how it takes over your room. But notice how that one bulb on the left side of your screen comes out of the left speaker. That was really cool. But then only 10 seconds later, we jump. It's a jump scene at 46 minutes even. Great bass, great heartbeat. All of a sudden, you ba-boom, ba-boom. I'll get to the heartbeat in a second, but there's you see one of the monsters moving up the stairs, and that's what the jump scene is about. Now the monsters are creeping around upstairs. Your overheads are fully engaged here, moving around the room. Emily Blunt goes over to a shelf, and she's trying to control her breathing. But all the while, you have, a little bit of score coming up telling you how ominous this scene is. You can hear, off and on, you can hear the creatures moving around upstairs. But that heartbeat, I think that's supposed to be the heartbeat of the baby because it's muffled. It sounds like a heartbeat that's like in water or something. So it wasn't like the heartbeat that we got earlier, where it was very clear, very like you could feel it in your own chest. This heartbeat felt like it was in something. So I feel like that was like giving you the representation. This baby's on its way, the heartbeat, boom, 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 because there was a different feel to this heartbeat. Really, really cool effect that they did there. Really liked that. All right, let's move along to 47 minutes, 50 seconds, Stalking, 3 boxes of popcorn, arrow pointing up. This scene here is about a little over a half a minute of just overhead Atmos glory, because this is the scene where, Emily Blunt's still hiding in the basement, and the monster is stalking her from upstairs, and you can hear the monster breathing, but every time it takes a step, your room shakes. The bass comes in, but you can hear it sounds like it's coming from overhead. So your overhead speakers are pulling your eyes and your sensibilities up, but the whole room is going boom, shaking. Meanwhile, there's also the breathing moving around up there and this ticking noise that the monster makes. Like a tick, 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 like it's searching, sending out like a sonar, like a tick, 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 sending that out. But it moves across your room. There was one at the very beginning when the monster, it's like right after the 4750, maybe it's at 4755, and the ticking noise actually ticks from left overhead front channel to the right overhead front channel, just right across the top of your ceiling. You get that ticking noise. But the other ticking that's going on is Emily Blunt has set the timer on a clock, and you can hear that going off very faintly. But it's like you can hear it, but it's not localized. It's just going off in your room. You can't tell where it's coming from. You just know that it's going off. And obviously you hear her breathing. You hear the breathing of the creature. And this goes on until 48 minutes and 25 seconds when the creature is actually downstairs now. So you're getting a good 30, 35 seconds of just overhead engagement of the sound moving over your head. Couple of jump scenes in there with the bass just going boom, shaking your room. But it really, takes your eyes and makes you look up in your room. Really, really cool, especially if you have at least 4 channels over your head, because the sound moves from left to right and back to front over your head. Really, really a lot of fun. Great if you have that setup. If you have a 4-channel overhead setup, definitely a demo scene. Absolutely overhead Atmos demo scene for sure. All right, moving along to 51 minutes and 55 seconds. Distraction and 3 boxes of popcorn for this one. So starting this at 51:55 is going to give you about 5 seconds of lead-in time before Emily Blunt puts out that scream. She's about to give birth. She's got her hands down. She's in the tub. All the while leading up to this, great scene leading up to it. Creatures stalking her up the stairs. There's sounds moving all around your room. Creatures on one side, then the other side. But this scene here where she's holding back screaming, trying to be quiet as long as possible, but she's delivering the baby in the tub, and it's like practically at the 52-minute mark even, where she finally can't hold it anymore, and all the sound, all the score, everything goes away, and all we get is her scream that just, she lets out that scream, but at the same time, we get the fireworks going off, and the score comes back in. And just the way they did that, the contrast between it was pretty loud in your room before that. You take away all other sounds and all we get is the scream. And then we get the fireworks, the score comes back in, John Krasinski's running with the shotgun, all the action is taken off. But how that sound just flows from lots of sound to just a scream to more sound, and just the way your room just explodes and goes away. Waves of sound, so much fun. That's what I should have named it. But I like Distraction because that's what they're doing here with the fireworks and trying to save her and get the creatures out of there. And unbelievable. But 3 boxes of popcorn, because I think that this is a fantastic demo scene. Because if you started at the 51-55, and when I think of a demo scene, I'm always talking about, like, you got somebody in your house and you want to show off a scene, and you show nothing else, or maybe you show a clip from another movie. These are fun because they'll be talking points. Like, maybe they haven't seen this movie, but listen to this, and you put on at 51-55, and they're like, holy crap, because your room explodes, and you're like, what movie was that? What scene is that? Like, if there was a thing where you could clip these things and save them and maybe share them with other people, I don't know. Maybe someday. I don't know. That would be a cool feature. That was sarcasm, everybody. All right. Moving along to 55 minutes and 30 seconds under the mattress. So leading up to this, obviously, great sound, great scene. John Krasinski's running with Emily Blunt and the baby. The baby's crying, and they're trying to get away from the creatures before they can find them. They're trying to get down to their bunker that they've built under the mattress. I'm giving this 2 boxes of popcorn with an overhead because it's at 55:30 where the mattress gets pulled over and we go to a completely blank screen, but you can still hear the creature overhead. So the creature's moving around under there. He's getting everything ready. You can hear the little sounds of him lighting the lighter. And then eventually you can hear him turn the oxygen on for the baby, because they're going to put the baby into that quiet chamber that they put the baby in so that the baby doesn't alert the creatures. But the bass that's going on in all of these overhead scenes, that you're getting the creatures moving around overhead, but your room is like, it's vibrating, it's shaking with every step of the creature. But it sounds like it's coming from overhead. It's panning overhead, but you can still hear the little sounds of, like, the oxygen tank, oxygen flowing through the little oxygen mask. So you hear the little bit of sound. I mean, the quiet sounds are still there, but your overheads are like taking over the room because the creature's moving around over your head. Really, really cool. And like I said, they start this scene off with very little on the screen. Like, at first, like I said, it's just a blank screen, but then you'll get just the lighter, and then you'll get a little bit more light. But it's really about what's going on overhead. So much fun. What a fantastic scene. Such a fun movie for a quiet movie. Moving on to 1 hour, 5 minutes, 20 seconds, running water, and there's a lot to this scene. The title of the scene that I gave it is actually the end of the scene, so let's build to that. We open the scene with Emily Blunt sees, like, the basement's flooded, that area is flooded. She goes to pick up her baby out of the bassinet, and before the water gets in there, and as she's doing so, one of the creatures comes up out of the water. Awesome bass, awesome sound, like a nice visceral feel to the room. But also, we get a nice pan because Emily Blunt's on the left side of your screen. The creature is on the right side of the screen. So you hear the creature coming up and making its noises on the right side of the screen. Fantastic. But now the creature doesn't know she's there because they're blind. The creature moves around and now is behind you. And now the shot is you're looking at Emily Blunt holding her baby, and the creature is behind you. You can hear Emily Blunt breathing, and she's trying to be quiet. The creature you can hear breathing at the right rear of your room, I'm sorry, the left rear of your room, over your left shoulder, you hear the creature. She is moving ever so slowly. That's at the front of your room because she's backing up. She is trying to get to that running water to hide any noises that she might make or the baby that might make, hidden by the waterfall. Foreshadowing a little earlier in the movie of what waterfalls can do. But as she's making her way, those sounds are at the front of the room, the sound of the creature, the bass in the room, just a fantastic scene of panning and using, like, you don't see the creature anymore because it's behind you, but you're terrified because there's a creature behind you. Fantastic. Awesome use of sound here. Awesome use throughout this entire movie. All right, let's move on to 1 hour, 7 minutes, 33 seconds on the right. This is John Krasinski standing on top of a tractor because his son has just fallen into the silo. He's basically slipping away like quicksand in the grain. And his daughter's up there as well. There's fantastic heartbeat throughout this scene. There's great bass when the trap door crashes in. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I really liked, that's all obvious. Fantastic. Like I said, through this entire movie, fantastic sound throughout the movie. But check out this pan when he's standing on top of the silo and he looks back because the creature, the monster, it was face to face with Emily Blunt in the waterfall, the basement waterfall. Here's the crash inside the silo. So the creature takes off. And now John Krasinski is seeing the creature make its way through the cornfield. It runs right by him as he's standing on top of the tractor. So he looks down and all we see is the cornfield, the wake, the corn stalks moving as it goes by. But the sound of the creature making its way starts off in the distance, slightly off center to the right. And it makes its way to you, goes a little bit more, gets louder and louder as it gets more to the right side of your room. And then as it goes by John Krasinski, it takes off and now you hear it making its way off to the backside, right side of your room. Just a really nice pan there, right? Nice use of taking that sound and actually giving it some dimension, 3D, and having it come at you, get louder, and then peak right as it goes by you, and you hear it in the back of the room. Really, really cool, with a lot of other stuff going on. Like I said before, the bass is going in the room. You hear that heartbeat going because everybody is panicking, ramping the tension up of the scene. But a really cool use of a pan right there that I thought was a lot of fun. And you know how much I like pans. All right, let's move on to 1 hour, 9 minutes, 58 seconds, Cochlear Implant, 3 boxes of popcorn, and a disclaimer that I didn't know what a cochlear implant was. My wife is the one that said it, and as a matter of fact, as I'm recording this, I knew this scene, and I had to text her to say, what was that hearing aid the daughter has? What is it called? She texted me, I copied and pasted what she wrote into my show notes so that it says cochlear implant, and I gave it 3 boxes of popcorn because, wow, what a scene. So this is the scene where at 1 hour, 9 minutes, 58 seconds, both of the kids are in the silo now, and the monster, the creature, is in the silo as well. And the reaction that the cochlear implant has when the creatures are around and that sound in your room inside this silo, inside your room, it's deafening. It's painful. It's painful to you in your room, and it's painful to the creature. But then the creature starts clawing at the metal, so you have that sound going on, and it's like they're looking at the kid. You're looking at the daughter clutching her ear, so you're focused on that. So then the sounds of the creature is off to the right hand side, and then the left hand, the scratching and the sound of the implant and the noise it's making and everything that's going on. Again, demo worthy. You put this on and people are going to go, if they've never seen the movie, what the hell is that? Why did you put me through that? It's so painful, but it's so good. So, I mean, the way they use the room, the way it moves around the room, and it gets you to squint to the point where, so much fun. If you're not in pain, you're not having fun. All right. Let's move along to 1 hour, 15 minutes, 20 seconds, sacrifice, 2 boxes of popcorn because of the buildup. So before John Krasinski screams out, they bring the sound down and give you that nice little score underneath it. And it kind of settles things down a little bit in your room until he finally, the pain in his eyes watching this happen to his kids. And he's like, okay. And he signs to his daughter, the whole thing. It brings the level down in the room of sound. And then all of a sudden he lets out that scream and that starts to fill the room. Then the creature goes at him, and it grabs it. You never see him get taken, but you hear it because he gets hit and then he's taken off to the left rear of your room, crunching all of the noises that go on. A fantastic scene, 2 boxes of popcorn. But the other thing is, it's what any father would do. This is what this movie has been building to. Emily Blunt saying, take care of them. Make sure you take care of them. And this is his last resort to take care of them. But it also has me go back to that scene with the old man. Was the old man giving up? Was just because he's old, does it mean he's giving up? Or was his family someplace else in danger and he got there and now he's letting out a scream like, come get me, and forget about what he had just heard? I don't know. Maybe the old man could have been foreshadowing exactly what John Krasinski's doing here. Maybe John Krasinski in his last moments in this scene are thinking, you know what? Maybe this is what the old man was doing as well. Maybe he wasn't just a crazy old man giving up on life. Maybe he was saving his family. So, all right. It's not over yet. Because at 1 hour, 18 minutes, and 46 seconds, we get not over yet. And this is where, now the family is underneath, minus John Krasinski, is in the basement. And they hear a creature show up upstairs. So you get that sound overhead, I believe, on the right side of your room, overhead right. And it makes its way down the stairs. Emily Blunt's got the shotgun aimed at it. But the pans you get as it comes down the stairs, it pans right to left. And it actually, on the front of your room, it moves from the high side of the right screen to the low side of the left of your screen, and then moves in around you. Just a really nice use of pans here, starting at the overheads as this creature makes its way down the stairs. Really, really cool. Then at 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 30 seconds, he loved me, and I give it 1 box of popcorn. So in this scene here, all sound is gone. They've eliminated all the sound in the room because you're seeing the room through the daughter's eyes, who's deaf, and she's looking around at all the things her dad was working on. The reason I titled it this is because this is just before this was her realization that he really did love her, because she was growing up under the assumption that he didn't love her, he didn't care about her, but he had been downstairs in the basement working on these implants for her to try to get her to be able to hear. But now she's also seeing his other research and what he was learning about the creatures, and she put kind of 2 and 2 together, and she realizes from earlier experience in the movie that her implant is actually giving feedback to, sonic feedback to the creatures. And so we go from 0 sound to her hitting her implant and actually making it give the feedback to the creatures. And you go from nothing, and there is a quick flash in the middle here where you go from nothing to just hearing the creature make its noises, and then back to absolutely nothing in your room. And yes, I could hear my projector on this because there is absolutely nothing in your room. And then they hit you with that sound that is painful. It is as painful as the beginning of Jurassic Park and that velociraptor in the cage. that sound, that loud, that fantastic. But it's just, I mean, it ramped, but you're also coming from nothing. And that's why you're literally at nothing to just full on high pitched sound with a nice bass added to it. Just fantastic, fantastic scene. Then lastly, at 1 hour, 23 minutes, 25 seconds, the end scene, kind of all end scenes, the way this ramps up, they figure out the sound, they figure out that the sound is what's going to kill and take down these creatures. And the sound ramps up as the daughter looks to the microphone. And I mean, she's turned up the sound. She's turned up the system outside. She's looking to the microphone and she turns to it and the sound is ramping up in your room and it's getting closer. And you think that she's going to put I thought the first time I saw this, that she was going to take the earpiece, put it to the microphone and just blow them out. But they end the movie so perfectly with, here we go, here it comes. And then they go, and Emily Blunt cocks the shotgun, and boom, nothing. Now we go to the credits. Perfect ending, perfect use of sound. What a fun movie. For a movie based on A Quiet Place, I thought that this movie was a great use of sound, absence of sound, full engagement of the room by having no engagement of the room. Just a lot of fun. An incredible home theater experience. Got to be a top 10 for me. Top 10 home theater experiences because of the use of lack of sound. It's such an experience that if you're a home theater fan, how do you not have this in your collection just to demonstrate how important the lack of sound is and how much that means to the loudest sounds that we hear? Because by contrast, if you have a movie that's just all sound, it's that becomes the standard, and you don't really, you can't have a dynamic sound if everything's loud. By the same token, if there's no sound, you can't have a dynamic. But then if you add in just rustling leaves like we did at the beginning of the movie, just those rustling leaves, the rustling papers at the beginning of the movie, they add in that bit of, peaks, and it creates a dynamic sound scene. Lots of fun. That'll do it for this week. Thank you to all my patrons. Thank you to all my Twitter followers. Looking forward to your comments on A Quiet Place. I've got a bunch of comments from earlier. So let's hear. I can't wait to talk to you guys on Tuesday. We'll be back on Tuesday with, Listeners Take Over Tuesday. So I'll talk to you then. Have a great weekend, everybody. And go push play. Hey, Fred.
This has been a Hey Fred production with theme music by Jeff Bernhardt and Throne Vault Productions.